there are families that live on in memory. Not because of their kindness, not because of their great wealth, but because of the shadows that followed them in the quiet backroads of 19th century America. Tucked away in forgotten forests, there are whispers of a family that should never have existed. A family bound not by love, but by a curse. The Brownings, their name is rarely spoken today, yet fragments of their story appear in faded archives, strange photographs, and unsettling folklore. They were a family people claimed to see, but could never fully explain. This is the story of the Browning curse hidden in plain sight, lingering like a faint echo in the trees. The beginning, the Browning family first appeared in records around 1849. In a settlement along the edge of the Appalachian wilderness. They weren't settlers in the usual sense. They didn't arrive with wagons or neighbors. They seemed to appear all at once. A father, a mother, 7 children of different ages, and a man said to be the mother's brother. They owned no land at first. They built no cabin. And yet, when the census takers came, the Brownings were already there, standing together in the woods, dressed in plain clothes as though they had been waiting. Some said they came from Virginia. Others claimed they were European immigrants who had gone astray. But the strangest part was this. No one could find a record of their birthplaces, not one. The Brownings lived simply. They tended to themselves, avoided gatherings, and rarely spoke more than a few words to anyone outside the family. The father was tall and silent, always seen with a black coat even in summer heat. The mother was pale, with a softness that felt almost otherworldly. The children walked in pairs, never apart, and never mingling with local children. Despite their distance, the family drew no anger, only unease. Farmers left food on their fence posts. Neighbors kept their distance. And every Sunday, when the townsfolk gathered for worship, the Brownings stayed in the forest, praying in their own quiet circle. What unsettled people most was not what the family did, but what seemed to follow. Livestock weakened when they grazed near Browning land. Travelers claimed they lost their way in the woods near the Browning home, walking in circles until night fell. A photographer who once passed through town swore that when he tried to take their portrait, the plates cracked in his hands, and yet, despite all of this, the Brownings thrived. By the 1860s, the Civil War swept across the land, and families everywhere were torn apart. But not the Brownings. No one enlisted from their household. No one was conscripted. And while others lost fathers and sons, the Browning family seemed untouched, standing just as they always hadn't changed, unbroken. That was when the whispers began. Some said the Brownings were protected by something unholy. Others believed they were cursed, trapped in their family line, unable to live or die as others did. Stranger still was what visitors noticed about their faces. Old photographs rare, and difficult to find, showed children who looked exactly the same year after year. No aging, no change in expression, as though time had frozen them in place. Neighbors began to avoid them entirely. And over time, the Browning homestead became known as the house in the trees. Imagine being a child in that nearby town. You would grow up hearing warnings. Don't go near the Browning woods. Don't look too long if you see them, staring. Don't follow their children if they call to you. But curiosity is strong, especially in youth. Stories spread of local children who tried to play near the Browning home. They returned quiet, unsettled, unable to explain what they had seen. Some claimed they saw 2 children where there should have been only 1. Some heard voices echoing their own words back at them. For the townsfolk, this was the heart of the problem. The Brownings weren't violent. They weren't cruel. They were simply wrong. A family that looked human. A family that behaved human. But when you stood close enough, when you truly looked, you realized something was missing, something that should have been their warmth. Growth, the ordinary spark of life. The mystery deepened in 1873, when a fire swept through part of the forest. Several homesteads burned, families fled, and the smoke turned the sky black. But the Browning home remained. Neighbors swore they saw flames bend away from the house. They watched sparks die in the air before reaching the roof, and when the smoke cleared, the Brownings stood outside, untouched, their faces calm, their children holding hands as though nothing had happened. That was when the local preacher spoke aloud what many had whispered in private. "These are not God's children," he said. "These are shadows wearing the shape of a family." Soon after, townsfolk began leaving offerings at the edge of the forest: bread, milk, coins, not out of kindness, but out of fear, as though feeding the family might keep misfortune away. But here lies the twist. In journals later discovered, the Browning mother wrote of sorrow. She wrote of prayers unanswered, of children who could not grow, of days that repeated like the turning of a wheel. She begged in faded ink, "Let them change. Let them live." The curse was not protection. It was prison. As the century turned, the Brownings began to fade from record. By 1900, they were no longer listed in census books. No deeds bore their name. Their land returned to wilderness. And yet, travelers claimed to see them, families walking together on misty mornings, dressed in old clothes, their faces pale and still. Some said they heard children's laughter in the woods, only to find no one there. Others swore they saw figures in old photographs, standing in the background, though they should not have been. One particularly chilling account came from a photographer in 1922. He developed a plate taken deep in the Appalachian woods. And there, behind the trees, was a family standing in perfect line: father, mother, children, and a man in a dark hat. They looked exactly as they had in photographs taken 70 years earlier. By now, the Browning curse had become legend. Parents told it as a warning to children. Travelers told it as a ghost story around fires. And historians, curious but cautious, dug into the tale. What they found was always the same. Records that began suddenly and ended just as suddenly. A family that never changed. A family that shouldn't have existed. But perhaps the most haunting truth lies not in what was written, but in what remains unseen, because even now, in certain quiet forests, people claim to feel it. That sense of being watched. That weight of silence pressing down. And sometimes, though no one likes to admit it, they claim to see a family standing together in the mist. Always watching. Always waiting, a satisfying ending. So what do we make of the Browning curse? Maybe they were a family caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, their lives twisted into legend by frightened neighbors. Maybe they were victims of something darker, bound by forces we cannot understand, living lives without change, without end. Or maybe they were never meant to exist at all. What matters is not whether you believe the tale, but how it lingers. Because every family carries shadows. Every family carries secrets, and sometimes those secrets grow so large they outlive us. The Brownings remind us of something we'd rather forget: that life can be fragile, that time can be cruel, and that some stories refuse to fade, even when the people in them should be long gone. So if you ever find yourself walking in a fog-filled forest, and you feel the silence grow heavy, remember this story, remember the family that stood together, unchanged, for far too long, the family that should not have existed, the Browning curse.